Oi, oi, alright, how's it going? I'm Grant, you're you. This is Doodle Review, coming through with a new album to chat faff about and tell you if I like it or not, really. Today, we're talking about the new Ariana Grande album, Eternal Sunshine. Now, the most common piece of advice I get when it comes to kind of building this channel is that I need to go niche, I need to specialize in my genre, and in my case that would be like 90s to 2000s alternative rock, and I do a fair amount of that. The logic sound is the reason I would do that. I get it. You know, any audience I've built based on a Queens of the Stone Age video don't really give a toss about Ariana Grande, and if anything it might put them off, so what's the point? Well, the fact is I've always wanted the reviews to be a true reflection of what I actually listen to, and while I've spent the last few weeks steeped in the world of the Icarus line, and I'm currently listening to the new Judas Priest album, I'm also kind of looking forward to the upcoming releases from Casey Musgraves, Justin Timberlake, Dua Lipa and Beyonce. I'm a fan of pop music. So if you're a fan of my alt rock content and you've landed here expecting a snarky dismantling of this new Ariana Grande album, I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint, because I'm a genuine fan of the pop star. Grande's last album, her sixth, Positions, was a solid fusion of pop and R&B tropes with a modern 21st century trap finish. Revisiting it ahead of this review, I was reminded again by the cohesive instrumental sound of that record. It's punctuated by a few tracks like the opening Shut Up and the lead single Positions that utilise orchestral elements like violins in particular in this kind of short, sharp, rhythmic way that create this really cool sounding urgency. And wisely across the whole album we only get fleeting glances of those classy strings, but they establish a language that the rest of the songs use, kind of these short, sharp, stabby, snappy bursts of movement, and as a result I found Positions to just glide along with a sound that kept things dynamic but never overpronounced itself, never interfered with the glossy pop hooks, and created a great character for Grande's exceptional vocal range to bounce off of. One thing I appreciated at the time of Positions' release that carries over to this record is the kind of modesty with which Ariana wields her voice. Grande has a really impressive vocal range that she can jump up and down effortlessly, but rather than constantly ad-libbing and milking it, she creates kind of more power by holding back. Runs and leaps are often baked into the melodies themselves, making things interesting and reducing the need for non-stop whoa. On Eternal Sunshine, Grande is vocally probably more restrained than we've heard thus far in her whole career, and this plays well with the themes of the album. Positions was all about the excitement of a new relationship, and Eternal Sunshine is clearly, even without being across the kind of tabloid gossip, it's about disillusion, reflection and rebuilding. Refreshingly, for a breakup record, this actually isn't about despair. It's like we've kind of missed that chapter and jumped into the melancholic but optimistic fresh start, new beginning phase, which, when considering how much of the pop landscape is dedicated to breakups, feels like a bit more of an interesting space to be in, and I appreciate that. So thematically things work nicely. Performance wise, Ariana is unimpeachable. As I've said, she is turning in quite low key delivery here, but it works well, and there are still many opportunities for her amazing vocal talents to shine. Where this album falls over a little bit for me is the quite inconsistent musical direction. As I've said, Positions felt really cohesive. Eternal Sunshine, on the other hand, is kind of all over the map in a way that I find distracts more than engages. This is interesting because arguably this record has a tighter, more consistent team of producers and songwriters, with the overwhelming majority of the record co-written, produced and overseen by mega producer Max Martin and Ilya Salmondeza. This means, of course, that the genre jumping and shifting is intentional, and in and of itself it's not a bad thing, but it's often hard to find what the musical through line is. You know, what's the instrumental language, which was something that Positions established so well, and we really don't get here. For me, this creates a kind of dissonance because it's clear that lyrically, thematically, and even performance-wise, things have been honed to have quite a consistent feel. But musically, we go from, you know, a kind of funky house, modern disco feel, a little reminiscent of an artist like Jessie Ware on infectious songs like Bye and the single Yes And. The former raising my eyebrows with some very prominent 70s wah guitar, and the latter being an obvious banger, but under the hood having some fantastic disco bass guitar fills. It's natural that based on the theme of the record, we then kind of take things down with some softer tracks, and we get this on Don't Want to Break Up Again, which features some nice use of filtering on the drums and fun backing vocals and flourishes from Grande. The title track, Eternal Sunshine, has this trap-infused R&B style with some of the most entertaining and dynamic vocal melodies in each segment, from the verse to the chorus to the bridge. Each are definite hooks, and interestingly all quite different, but they all work together. And these make sense within the record, but from here we jump to Supernatural and later We Can't Be Friends. The latter especially really leaning into an electro-pop direction that doesn't feel at home with the warmer disco or R&B pieces. In fact, We Can't Be Friends feels like such a massive nod to the sad pop electronica of Robin. She should get a writing credit. Although I actually think it's probably one of the weakest tracks on the album, and it just feels so ill-fitting that it kind of puts me off. True Story switches things again with a bass-heavy electronic R&B groove that had me checking to see if Timbaland had jumped on for a song. So much did it remind me of that Justin Timberlake Future Sex sound. As I've said, none of these on their own are necessarily bad, just inconsistent, and it throws me off when listening. There are other tracks I do enjoy. The aptly titled The Boy Is Mine gives a very early 2000s R&B pop of an artist like Aaliyah, with Grande's vocals here mixed to perfection. I also love the melancholy filtered horns of the very final track, Ordinary Things. Overall for me, this is a solid 6. I've enjoyed it, but it's an inconsistent experience, and while there aren't any bad songs here, there are also a few, if any, pop classics, and if there would have been, it probably would have kind of tipped the scale for me and distracted me away from those stylistic inconsistencies. That's it from me, no, let's knock it on the head. What did you think? Let me know in the comments, and while you're down there in all those clicks and taps, there's probably a subscribe button kicking about around there, so hit it up, subscribe, share some thoughts, show some love, or just hurl some abuse, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers mate, bye.